I want you to think for a second about a phrase you probably hear all the time.
Oh, there are a few of those going around right now.
Right. You know the one.
Mhm.
You see it on social media, or you hear it in casual conversations. Maybe you've even said it yourself recently as a way to, like, diffuse an argument.
Let me guess. The whole everyone has their own truth thing?
Exactly. Everyone has their own truth, or maybe it's um, that really popular spiritual sentiment you see on bumper stickers and inspirational posters.
The one that says, deep down, we are all one.
Yes, that one.
Uh,
That we're all just, different drops in the exact same cosmic ocean.
yeah.
And, I mean, on the surface, that sounds incredibly freeing, doesn't it?
Oh, it sounds incredibly compassionate.
Right. It sounds like the ultimate form of acceptance. Like,
Yeah.
if you have your truth and I have my truth, we never have to clash.
Yeah, it's a very comforting idea.
But if we're being completely honest, when you really try to live that philosophy out in the real world, it can lead to a profound sense of chaos.
Absolutely chaos, yeah.
It can lead to massive identity confusion. And, maybe most importantly for how a society functions, it can lead to a complete lack of accountability.
That's the real danger right there.
Because, think about it. If everyone's truth is equally valid, and if we are all ultimately the exact same thing, just playing different roles, then, well, who is actually responsible for anything?
Right, and that flattening of reality is something we inherently crave in the modern era, because it feels democratic.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. Democratic.
Yeah, we like the idea of flattening hierarchies in our workplaces, in our social structures, but when you attempt to flatten reality itself...
Which is a huge leap.
Exactly. When you claim there is no fundamental difference between the creator, the created, the good, the bad, you and me, you strip away the very architecture that allows a system to function.
You just lose the boundaries.
You lose the boundaries that make relationships meaningful. You lose the framework that makes consequences real.
Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm here with our resident expert to look at a stack of source material that details a 13th century Hindu philosophical tradition.
Right, Dvaita Vedanta.
Dvaita Vedanta. Now, I know what you might be thinking. 13th century theology. How is this going to help me with my life today?
It sounds a bit disconnected at first glance.
It does. But I want you to look at this material not just as ancient history, but as like an anti-chaos operating system for reality.
I love that framing, an anti-chaos operating system.
Yeah, because we are going to extract the mental models of a tradition that completely, aggressively rejects the all-is-one philosophy.
It argues the exact opposite, actually.
Right. It argues that reality is strictly hierarchical, that differences are eternal, and here is the part that is really going to challenge our modern sensibilities, that true freedom actually comes from strict alignment with a system you absolutely did not create.
We are going to explore a worldview where truth is not something you get to just invent on a whim.
No bespoke realities here.
Exactly. It is fiercely objective. In the system, your actions have inescapable structural consequences.
Wow.
Yeah, it is a reality built entirely on 3 pillars: eternal differences, absolute dependence, and active devotion.
I have to admit, I am enthusiastically curious about this, but also, a little intimidated.
It's a heavy concept to take in.
It is. Because on paper, a system that is this rigid, this hierarchical, and this insistent on strict boundaries, it sounds suffocating. We are taught to break boundaries, not revere them.
That's the modern default, yeah. Break the rules, disrupt the system.
Right. And yet, the source material makes it abundantly clear that for the people living inside this system, it provides an incredibly deep, enduring sense of peace and meaning.
It essentially cures their existential dread.
Which we have a lot of these days. But to understand how this anti-chaos operating system works, we first have to understand the software it was designed to replace, right? Like, why was the system built in the first place?
Well, to understand the fix, you have to understand the bug.
Okay, lay it out for us.
You cannot understand Dvaita Vedanta without understanding the massive philosophical rebellion that birthed it. For that, we need to go to 13th century India.
Specifically the southwestern coastal region, right?
Yeah.
What we now call Karnataka.
Exactly. And the central figure in our sources is Madhvacharya. He was a philosopher, a theologian, a brilliant debater, and a deeply committed devotee of the god Vishnu.
But the tradition goes out of its way to clarify that he didn't just, sit under a tree and invent these ideas out of thin air.
No, not at all. That's a crucial point.
The sources are very insistent on his role.
Yeah.
He is viewed as a restorer of eternal truths.
Right.
He believed these truths were already present in the foundational ancient texts, the Vedas, but that humanity had basically, well, they'd lost the plot.
Yeah. He saw his mission as clarifying and defending a structure of reality that had been dangerously obscured by the intellectual trends of his time.
And what were those trends?
The primary force obscuring that truth was the overwhelmingly dominant philosophy known as Advaita Vedanta.
Dvaita Vedanta.
Right, which had been championed a few centuries earlier by a massive philosophical figure named Shankara.
Okay, let's break down Advaita Vedanta for a second, because the prefix A means not, and Dvaita means dual.
Exactly, so it translates to non-dualism.
Meaning not to.
Right. Advaita teaches that ultimate reality is one singular, undifferentiated consciousness.
So just one big blob of existence.
Basically, yeah. It claims that the world we see, hear, and interact with every day, the trees, the cities, our bodies, is ultimately an illusion.
And they have a specific word for that illusion, right?
Yes, they use the concept of Maya. Maya is the cosmic illusion that tricks us into seeing multiplicity where there is really only oneness.
Okay, I'm following.
And most radically, Advaita asserts that the individual soul, at its absolute core, is identical to God, which they call Brahman.
Okay, so the core thesis is, you are God, I am God, the microphone in front of me is God. And any sense that we are separate entities with individual agency is just like a temporary dream we need to wake up from.
That's the exact premise.
I think they use the famous analogy of seeing a snake in the dark, getting terrified, and then turning on the light to realize it was just a rope all along.
Oh yeah, that rope snake analogy is the cornerstone of Advaita. The fear was real to you in the moment, sure, but the object of your fear was an illusion born of ignorance.
Wow.
Once the light of knowledge is turned on, the illusion vanishes, and only the rope remains. Shankara argued that once you achieve true enlightenment, the illusion of the separate self vanishes, and only Brahman remains.
So you just dissolve into the oneness.
Exactly. Now, to be fair, there was also a middle ground philosophy at the time called Vishishtadvaita.
Which means qualified non-dualism, right? Championed by Ramanuja.
Correct. That system tried to soften the blow a bit by claiming that souls are essentially a part of God.
Like a wave is part of the ocean.
Right. Or a spark is part of a fire.
Okay, so you have absolute oneness on one side and a part-to-whole relationship on the other.
Yeah.
But Madhvacharya looks at both of these systems and initiates a stark, uncompromising rejection of both.
He completely tears them down.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Because if you ask anyone in the West today to describe Eastern philosophy, the stereotype they love is exactly Advaita.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the we are all a drop in the same ocean idea. It's the yoga studio bumper sticker.
Yeah.
And the appeal is obvious, It sounds profoundly peaceful.
It does.
Like, if we are all literally the same cosmic stuff, there's no reason to fight. So if we aren't all one, what's the point? Doesn't insisting on separation just guarantee conflict and division?
It's a very natural, modern assumption to equate distinction with conflict. We just assume that if you and I are different, we will eventually go to war over those differences.
Right. It feels inevitable.
But Madhvacharya argued that collapsing distinctions doesn't create peace at all. It creates a dangerous blur where accountability goes to die.
A dangerous blur. I like that phrase.
Let's look at the logical endpoint of non-dualism. If everything is ultimately one, and if you are ultimately identical to God, then who is holding you accountable for your actions?
I mean, no one. Right. You're the one in charge.
Exactly. Who is responsible for injustice in the world? If the world is a literal illusion, then moral responsibility, devotion, suffering, and real differences lose all their grounding.
They just don't matter anymore.
They become meaningless games we play until we realize we are the only player in the universe.
That is a fascinating critique. It's like playing a massive multiplayer online video game, taking it really seriously, trying to help other players and defeat the villains.
Yeah.
But then you suddenly realize every other character is just an NPC. Like a non-playable character controlled by your own subconscious code.
That's a perfect analogy.
None of the points matter. The villains aren't real. The victims aren't real. Why try? Why be good? Why help anyone if their suffering is just an illusion they haven't woken up from yet?
That is the exact existential trap Madhvacharya saw. And so Dvaita emerges as a massive correction to that blur.
A reality check, basically.
Yes. He asserted that reality is inherently pluralistic. The world is fully real. The suffering in it is real.
And the soul is real.
The soul is fully real. God is fully real. And crucially, these are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Dvaita argues that complex systems only function and true peace is only achieved when distinctions are real, when they are respected, and when every component understands its distinct role within that larger system.
Okay, so if the universe isn't a single blurry unity, how is it actually built?
Good question.
Because if Madhvacharya is tearing down the house of non-dualism, he has to build a new one.
Mm.
And the source material lays out the structural blueprints of the Dvaita universe. And it's incredibly specific.
It's extremely categorized.
Yeah, it's not just we are separate, it's a highly categorized architecture.
The architecture is the defining feature of Dvaita. At the absolute foundation, Madhvacharya breaks reality down into 3 fundamental categories.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, you have Ishvara, which is God, specifically understood in this tradition as Vishnu or Narayana. This is the independent reality.
The independent reality, got it.
Second, you have Jiva, which are the individual souls. These are conscious beings, but they are dependent.
Okay, conscious but dependent. And the third?
And third, you have Prakriti, which is matter, the physical stuff of the universe. This is also dependent, but unlike souls, it is unconscious.
And these 3 categories aren't just like temporary states of being that eventually merge back together. The text introduces this foundational concept called the Panchapheda,
Yes, the 5 real differences.
which are eternal structural differences that can never be undone, right?
The Panchapheda is the backbone of the entire tradition. Madhvacharya didn't just state them, he spent his life aggressively debating and proving them, using logic and scripture.
So what are the 5 differences?
Number 1, the difference between God and the individual soul. Number 2, the difference between God and matter.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense.
Number 3, the difference between one individual soul and another individual soul. Number 4, the difference between the soul and matter. And number 5, the difference between one material thing and another.
Let me use an analogy here to make sure I'm really visualizing the mechanics of this, because I love thinking about this in terms of software architecture.
Oh, let's hear it.
So in this Dvaita system, God is the sole server administrator. And the text uses a very specific Sanskrit term for this, svatantra, meaning entirely independent.
Right, God is the only svatantra.
Okay. And we, the individual souls, are the user accounts. We are paratantra, meaning dependent.
Exactly.
So as a user account, I have agency on the platform. I can make choices. I can interact with other users. I can build things within the software.
But you don't own the servers.
Exactly. Absolutely do not own the servers. I didn't write the underlying code. I can't change the physics engine of the game. And my user account is forever completely separate from your user account.
Mm.
We don't merge into one mega account at the end of the game.
No, never.
Is that a fair way to map the mechanics?
That analogy tracks perfectly with Madhvacharya's logic. It highlights exactly why Dvaita pushes back so hard against the idea of merging with the divine.
Because it just doesn't compute in that system.
Right. In your software analogy, a standard user account doesn't eventually evolve into the server admin just by playing the game really well. That's a category error.
A category error, yeah, you just get banned for hacking.
Basically. The user account realizes its highest potential by operating perfectly within the parameters set by the admin. If the user tries to act like the admin, they just generate errors and crash their own experience.
That makes total sense.
But we need to add a crucial layer to your analogy here. The server admin in Dvaita is not a cold, abstract, automated force.
Oh, right.
Vishnu is a deeply personal, conscious being with will, intention, and a sense of perfect justice.
That feels like a huge distinction to make. We aren't just talking about like the Force from Star Wars or some blind watchmaker who set the universe spinning and walked away.
No, it is a dynamic personal relationship. Madhvacharya used strict logic to prove this separation.
How so?
For example, he argued that if the soul and God were identical, then God would be subject to ignorance and suffering, because we clearly experience ignorance and suffering.
That's a really solid point.
Right, but a supreme being, by definition, cannot be ignorant. Therefore, the soul experiencing the ignorance must be fundamentally different from the God who possesses supreme knowledge.
Wow. Logic in action.
You are never identical to God in this system. Not now, not after you die, not even in the highest state of spiritual liberation. The relationship is characterized by eternal difference combined with an eternal, loving dependence.
Okay, let's trace the logic forward. We have the players, God, souls, and matter. We have the rules of the platform, eternal difference and dependence.
Yep.
Now, what actually happens when the game is played? How does this operating system handle human action? And what is the ultimate destiny of these distinct souls?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Because if God is the ultimate server admin, and we are just dependent user accounts, why do our choices matter at all? If the admin controls the servers, doesn't that make the whole idea of human action kind of pointless?
This brings us directly to the mechanics of karma in the Dvaita framework.
Okay, let's get into karma.
In a lot of Western understandings, and honestly, even in some other Eastern traditions, karma is viewed almost like an autonomous mechanical law of physics.
Right.
It operates blindly. You drop an apple, gravity pulls it down. You commit a selfish act, a negative consequence inevitably rebounds to you in this life or the next.
Right, the popular view is like a cosmic vending machine.
A cosmic vending machine, exactly.
You input a certain number of good deeds, you press the button, and you receive a proportionately good life outcome.
But that mechanical model is exactly what Madhvacharya rejected.
Really?
He looked at that vending machine concept and saw a lifeless universe where God was irrelevant. In his framework, karma is not an autonomous machine. It is a complex legal system actively overseen by an intelligence.
So God is actually involved in the process?
Yes. God administers the justice, God ensures the fairness of the reactions. The system operates on the law of karma, but there is an active personal judge overseeing the courtroom, weighing the intent behind the actions, not just the mechanical output.
That completely changes the weight of human action. Your choices matter because someone is actively observing and balancing the scales. It shifts the purpose of life entirely?
It shifts it from self-discovery to service.
Service.
In non-dual systems, the purpose of life is to realize your inner divinity. You meditate to peel back the layers of illusion until you find God inside yourself.
But in Dvaita.
In Dvaita, you aren't divine in that independent sense. The purpose of life is to realize your complete, utter dependence on God and to engage in bhakti.
Bhakti meaning devotional service.
Yes.
So how does that lead to the ultimate goal? Because in every Hindu tradition, the ultimate goal is liberation or moksha.
Right, escaping the cycle.
Escaping the exhausting cycle of reincarnation or samsara. In the non-dual systems, liberation is often described as a cognitive shift. You just wake up from the dream. But here, the requirements to exit the system seem much more demanding.
They are incredibly specific and rigorous. To achieve liberation in Dvaita, you need 3 distinct elements working in tandem.
Okay, what's the first?
First, you need right knowledge, or jananana. You cannot be liberated if you are confused about the architecture. You have to intellectually understand and deeply internalize these exact differences we are talking about. You have to know that God is supreme and you are separate.
No blurry lines allowed.
None. Second, you need devotion, the bhakti. It cannot just be cold academic knowledge. It has to be a loving, intentional, subservient relationship.
Okay, knowledge and devotion. What's the third?
The third element is the most critical, and it breaks the vending machine model entirely. You need the grace of God.
The grace of God. Let's map that back to the software analogy.
Yeah.
That means no matter how much knowledge I accumulate about the code or how perfectly my user account performs its tasks without generating errors,
Yep.
I cannot force the system to upgrade me to a liberated status. The system isn't automated to just spit out moksha when I hit 1,000,000 points.
That is the exact mechanism. You cannot hack or engineer your own liberation purely on your own merit. A finite being cannot force the hand of an infinite, independent being.
Wow, that's humbling.
Very. Your knowledge and your devotion make you an eligible candidate, but the final act of liberation depends entirely on the will of the independent reality, the Svatantra. The server admin has to manually grant the upgrade.
Okay, here is where the source material gets highly controversial, especially for a modern audience.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah, the texts outline what happens to these souls over the long span of eternity, and it introduces this concept of an intrinsic hierarchy of souls.
Right.
It says there are 3 distinct outcomes at the end of the line. One is liberation, which is eternal bliss in God's presence.
The ideal outcome.
2 is continued rebirth, just staying in the cycle of samsara indefinitely. And 3, and this is the shocker, is eternal damnation for some souls.
This is perhaps the most unique and fiercely debated teaching in all of Dvaita Vedanta. It is known as the doctrine of Trivida Jivas, the 3 categories of souls.
Trivida Jivas.
Madhvacharya argued that souls are not blank slates. They are not all identical in their intrinsic nature, their spiritual capacity, or their ultimate destiny.
Hold on. Eternal damnation in a Hindu philosophy. I always thought that was a strictly Western Abrahamic concept, the whole heaven and hell binary.
It's extremely rare in Eastern traditions, yes.
And furthermore, unequal destinies. That feels aggressively contradictory to everything we are taught today. Our modern egalitarian values are built on the foundational idea that everyone has equal potential.
Right. That's the bedrock of modern thought, yeah.
That deep down, we all have the same fundamental worth and trajectory if we were just given the right circumstances and education. Doesn't this Dvaita concept just sound like a highly convenient theological way to justify harsh social hierarchies and caste systems in the real world?
It is the point of maximum friction with modern democratic sensibilities, without a doubt. It forces us to confront our deepest assumptions about equality.
I mean, yeah, it feels deeply unfair.
But to understand why Madhvacharya insisted on this, we have to look at his philosophical proofs, using a concept we can call experiential realism.
Experiential realism.
Uh-huh.
Walk me through how he used that to prove eternal damnation.
Madhvacharya looked at the real world. He observed human behavior deeply. He saw that even when people are placed in the exact same environment with the exact same teachings and opportunities, they behave incredibly differently.
Okay, that's undeniably true.
Right. Some people naturally incline toward compassion and truth. Others, no matter what interventions occur, consistently exhibit profound cruelty, deception, and a hatred for order.
Sure, we see that all the time.
Instead of adopting the modern psychological view, which says, well, deep down they are all exactly the same and just confused or traumatized, Dvaita concludes that souls behave differently because souls are intrinsically different.
Wow. So they are taking the empirical evidence of human behavior, the vast spectrum of good and evil we see every day, and mapping it directly onto the metaphysical nature of the soul.
Precisely. Because he believed in objective reality. If evil exists and persists, it must have a root.
It can't just be an accident.
Exactly. He argued that just as a seed of a poisonous plant will only ever grow into a poisonous plant, certain souls have an intrinsic nature that is opposed to truth. These are the Tamayogyas, souls destined for darkness.
Destined for darkness.
But listen, it isn't framed as a vindictive punishment from an angry god.
Oh, it isn't?
No, it is framed as a natural sorting of the universe. The soul eventually gravitates to the environment that matches its intrinsic core.
So it's just finding its level, so to speak.
Exactly. The tradition makes a very crucial, highly subtle philosophical move here. It completely separates the concept of value from the concept of sameness.
Oh, that's huge. Value versus sameness.
Modern egalitarianism often assumes that for people to have equal rights or value, they must be fundamentally the exact same blank slate inside. Dvaita says no.
It says they can be different and still matter.
Every soul is real. Every soul is meaningful within the cosmic system. But they are absolutely not identical in their nature, their capacity for devotion, or their ultimate outcome. It is a graded reality.
Value does not equal sameness. That is a heavy, heavy concept to sit with. It completely rewires how you look at a crowd of people.
It really does.
It's almost like looking at a massive, complex ecosystem. A wolf, a deer, an oak tree, and a fungus all have immense value. They are all vital to the functioning of the ecosystem. You wouldn't say the system could survive without them.
Right.
But you would never say they have the same nature, the same capacity, or the same ultimate destiny. They operate under entirely different parameters.
The ecosystem is a brilliant way to visualize it. It is an ecosystem of consciousness, meticulously overseen by a supreme architect who ensures everything operates according to its intrinsic nature.
Okay, let's bring this down from the cosmos to the ground level.
Good idea.
What does it actually look like when you wake up on a Tuesday morning? Because philosophy this strict, this intensely focused on hierarchical differences and objective truth, could so easily become just a dry, academic exercise for scholars debating in a library.
Oh, totally. If a philosophy only lives in your head, it eventually evaporates under the stress of daily life.
Right, so how does a tradition based on rigid hierarchy manifest in the daily, emotional, and physical life of a regular human being?
In Dvaita, belief has to be lived out through intense embodied reinforcement. It manifests through action, ritual, and rigorous discipline.
Like what?
Well, at the absolute center of this lived reality is temple worship.
The sources specifically highlight the Udupi Krishna temple, which Madhvacharya himself established in the 13th century, and which is still massively active today.
It is the pulsing heart of the tradition, and the core experience for a practitioner at that temple is darshan.
Darshan.
Darshan roughly translates to seeing and being seen by the divine, but remember the philosophy we just unpacked. When a Dvaita practitioner stands before the deity in Udupi, they are not meditating on their own inner divinity.
They aren't looking in a mirror.
Right. They're not trying to realize that they and the statue are one. They are approaching a real, entirely separate, supreme being who has absolute authority over them.
It's an encounter with an authority figure, not an introspective realization of the self.
That distinction drives the entire daily rhythm of a practitioner's life. The lifestyle is highly structured to prevent the ego from inflating.
How structured are we talking?
A serious practitioner will wake early, long before dawn. They perform Sandhya Vandanam, which are structured daily prayers tied to the movement of the sun. They chant the specific names of Vishnu.
That sounds intense.
It is. But perhaps the most pervasive daily reinforcement revolves around food.
Oh, I was really struck by the details on food culture in the notes.
Hmm.
Before eating anything, the food has to be formally offered to God.
Yeah.
It then becomes prasada, which means blessed or sanctified food.
Think about the psychological conditioning of that ritual. You spend an hour cooking a beautiful meal. Your modern instinct is, I made this, I own this, I will now consume it for my pleasure.
Absolutely, I earned this.
Right. But the ritual of prasada short-circuits that ego. By preparing the food, offering it away to the deity, and then receiving it back to eat, the practitioner is physically enacting the entire philosophy every single day. It is a visceral, biological reminder nothing is truly mine. I am not the independent creator of this sustenance. Everything I have, even the energy to chew this food, is received from the independent source.
It's a daily, physical manifestation of being paratantra, a dependent user account. You are constantly acknowledging the server admin before you execute a program.
That's exactly it.
And the sources mention that this structure isn't just maintained by quiet, solemn meditation, right? It's reinforced by vibrant art and music, specifically the Haridasa movement.
The Haridasas were wandering devotional singers and poets. They took these incredibly dense Sanskrit philosophical arguments about the Panchabheda and translated them into accessible, emotional songs in the local Kannada language.
Making it accessible to everyday people.
Yes. It proves that truth in this tradition isn't just explained in high-level debates, it's felt. It is reinforced through rhythm, repetition, and shared communal emotion. It makes the strict hierarchy beautiful.
They also use very distinct physical symbols to reinforce this, right? The notes list a few specific items that practitioners wear or revere in their homes.
The symbols serve as visual anchors for the worldview. You have the chakra, the spinning disc, which represents divine order, control, and the inescapable authority of time.
Okay, a chakra.
You have the conch shell, which represents the spreading of clear, unmistakable, resonant truth. But the most personal symbol is the urdhva pundra, or the tilaka, the distinct vertical mark worn on the forehead.
You see that vertical line in a lot of images. What does that specifically signify in the Dvaita context?
In this framework, it is a physical, public declaration of alignment with Vishnu. It marks the human body itself as a temple, a space dedicated to serving the Supreme Being.
Like wearing a uniform, almost.
Yes. In a modern context, we use clothes or haircuts as identity markers to show how unique and independent we are. The tilaka is an identity marker that says the exact opposite. It's an identity defined entirely by your relationship to the top of the hierarchy.
The tradition also relies heavily on sacred narratives to encode these values. The sources point to two main stories that perfectly captured the Dvaita mindset. One is from the great epic, the Mahabharata, specifically the section known as the Bhagavad Gita, focusing on the warrior Arjuna.
Arjuna is the classic archetype of a human being paralyzed by confusion about their duty.
He's the guy on the chariot who doesn't want to fight, right?
Exactly. He is on a battlefield, facing an army that includes his own relatives and teachers, and he drops his weapons. He doesn't want to fight a devastating war.
Which is pretty understandable.
Very understandable. But Lord Krishna's instruction to him is absolutely not the modern advice of, look inside yourself and find your own truth.
No, definitely not.
The instruction is structural. You must understand your distinct role in the cosmic order, you must execute your duty without attachment to the outcome, and you must surrender the results entirely to God.
So Arjuna learns he is not the ultimate authority on what is right or wrong.
Right. But he still has to take responsible, heavy action within the system.
And the other figure highlighted in the notes is Hanuman, the incredible monkey deity from the Ramayana epic.
Hanuman is the absolute pinnacle ideal for a Dvaita practitioner. He represents a combination that is very rare, immense, earth-shaking strength, combined with perfect, egoless devotion.
He serves Lord Rama, right, who is an avatar of Vishnu.
Correct. Hanuman has the power to move mountains, literally, but he never uses that power to try and take the throne for himself. He never seeks independence. His massive power is entirely realized and perfected through his service.
Listening to all this, the early wake-ups before dawn, the constant food offerings, the physical markings, the narratives enforcing duty over preference, it sounds like life is a constant series of micro-alignment.
Micro-alignments.
It's like you are walking through a dense forest and you have to pull out a compass every 3 hours to make absolutely sure you are still walking perfectly true north. To a modern person conditioned to seek comfort and spontaneous freedom, that sounds exhausting.
It does sound exhausting to us, yes.
But as I read the sources, I kept wondering, is it possible that living this way is actually oddly relieving?
It is deeply relieving, and that psychological relief is the secret engine of the tradition. We have to honestly evaluate the psychological toll of modern life.
Okay, let's evaluate it.
Rituals in Dvaita are not just empty symbols you perform out of guilt. They are behavioral reinforcements of reality. When you live in a modern world where you are told you have to invent your own meaning, define your own fluid identity, and figure out the moral physics of the universe from scratch every single morning, that is what is truly exhausting.
Oh, absolutely. The decision fatigue of modern existentialism. We are crushed under the weight of having to be the authors of our own reality.
Dvaita systematically removes that weight. It shifts the emotional tone of life from a chaotic, anxious, endless searching to a grounded, purposeful duty.
You don't have to guess what you're supposed to do.
You know exactly where true north is because the compass was handed to you by the Creator. You know your precise place in the hierarchy. And, importantly, we can't forget the devotion, the bhakti.
Right, it's not just a cold machine.
The love softens what would otherwise just be a rigid, cold legal structure. It makes the obedience an act of joyous love rather than fearful submission.
Let's look closer at the type of mind that actually thrives in this specific environment. We've looked at the intense philosophy and the daily rituals. The source material maps this worldview onto a specific psychological profile, which it refers to as the Kenny archetype.
Ah, yes, the system builder.
The person who looks at reality not as a blank canvas to paint on, but as an architecture to understand.
The Kenny archetype is a brilliant lens for this material because the core human problem, according to the Dvaita mindset, is not that you are ignorant of your inner divinity.
No.
The root bug in the human software, the cause of all our suffering, is fundamentally misunderstanding your position in reality. It is acting as if you are independent when you are factually dependent.
It's a behavioral bug. You are a dependent user account trying to execute commands that require admin privileges, and it is actively crashing your operating system.
That is exactly what happens. You try to control outcomes you don't own, and you suffer anxiety. You try to claim ownership over things that are temporary, and you suffer grief.
That hits a little too close to home.
It does. So, the highest virtues in the Dvaita system are specifically tailored to patch that bug. Humility is paramount, but not as a performative self-deprecation.
Like not just acting humble.
Right. Humility just means having an accurate assessment of your actual place relative to God. Discipline is required to maintain the correct practice. Truthfulness means aligning your words with objective reality rather than spinning a narrative to suit your personal preference.
Which we do all the time.
Constantly. And responsibility is grounded in deeply understanding that your actions have real, tracked consequences within the karma system.
Let's break down the internal dialogue of someone living this way. Because today, if I was to make a big career decision or navigate a conflict, my internal dialogue is usually driven by questions like, what do I feel like doing? What's going to make me happiest in the moment? What choice best expresses my authentic, unique self?
The standard modern questions.
But for a Dvaita practitioner, those questions are almost irrelevant.
They're completely asking the wrong questions. A Dvaita practitioner's internal dialogue is structurally different. They are asking, what is the right action in this specific context? What is my prescribed duty? Am I acting in alignment with the objective truth of my position?
So identity in this system is something you discover through observation and align with.
Yeah.
It is absolutely not something you self-create.
Not at all.
Which completely reframes the modern concept of freedom. We think of freedom as the total absence of constraints, the ability to do whatever we want, whenever we want. But in Dvaita, freedom is perfect alignment within the constraints of the system.
Consider how a machine operates. A gear in a complex watch is not free when you take it out of the watch and throw it on the table.
No, it's just useless.
It can't do anything. It has lost its purpose. It is only fully realized, fully free to do what it was made to do when it is perfectly aligned with the other gears, constrained by the design of the watchmaker.
That's a great image.
In the software analogy, the program runs perfectly when it follows the syntax of the coding language. Trying to break the syntax doesn't make the code free, it just breaks the program.
Imagine applying this mindset to a modern corporate job or to being part of a family unit. Instead of constantly striving to be the CEO or trying to be the main character of your family's reality, you derive total, profound satisfaction from being the most perfectly aligned, high-functioning gear in that specific machine.
Yeah, you stop fighting the structure.
It is a complete 180-degree rejection of the individualism we are sold every day.
We need to highlight how quietly yet radically anti-ego this worldview is. Modern culture constantly demands that you elevate yourself. I define my reality. My feelings validate the truth of a situation.
My truth.
My truth, exactly. Dvaita calmly replies, reality is already defined. The hierarchy is permanently set. Your feelings, while real to you, do not change the objective truth of the universe.
It's just a reality check.
Your job is not to redefine the universe. Your job is to align with it.
I can easily see how that appeals to people who are just exhausted. People who naturally value structure, who care deeply about justice and accountability, and who are absolutely burned out by the cultural pressure of having to invent the universe and their own bespoke purpose every single day.
It removes the crushing burden of cosmic authorship from your shoulders. You aren't the author of the play. You are a character in the story, and your only job is to play your specific role with absolute integrity and devotion.
So if this system is this demanding, this structured, and runs so fundamentally contrary to everything our modern global culture praises about individualism, fluidity, and self-creation,
Yeah.
how has it survived intact for over 700 years?
Against all odds, really.
And maybe more surprisingly, why would anyone raised in the modern secular world actually choose to convert to it today?
It has survived precisely because it is demanding and heavily structured. Systems with blurry boundaries and flexible rules dissolve over time. They just blend into whatever the current cultural trend is.
That makes sense. They get watered down.
Dvaita survived because it built robust, physical, institutional structures to protect the philosophy. The source material specifically points to the Ashtamathas, the 8 monasteries of Udupi.
Oh, I was reading about that. They have this brilliant rotating system of leadership, the pariah system, where the responsibility for the main temple worship rotates among the 8 monasteries every 2 years.
Yes, the pariah system.
It's like a built-in governance mechanism that prevents any one lineage from stagnating, becoming corrupt, or taking total dictatorial control.
It ensures institutional continuity and distributes power just enough to keep the system healthy. And they combine that physical infrastructure with incredibly clear doctrinal boundaries.
Right, we talk about that. No blurry lines.
There are no blurry lines in Dvaita theology. They know exactly what they believe, they know exactly what they reject, and they have centuries of debate manuals proving why. Furthermore, they integrated those high-level beliefs into the daily physical reality of the followers, the food, the morning routines, the music.
It's a whole ecosystem.
It isn't just a philosophy you read in a book. It's a life you physically practice from the moment you wake up. It perfectly balances intense, rigorous intellectual debate with warm, emotional devotion.
But how do they handle the out-group?
Mm-hmm.
How do they interact with the rest of the world that fundamentally disagrees with them?
Yeah.
Because usually, religious systems with boundaries this high and rigid become isolated, paranoid, or actively hostile to outsiders.
This is a fascinating sociological dynamic. The Dvaita believers hold that truth is absolute and objective. They do not subscribe to the modern idea that all paths lead to the same mountain peak.
Right.
They fiercely disagree with Advaita, with Buddhism, with Western philosophies, but socially and historically, they have been remarkably cooperative.
Oh, really?
Yes, they respect others at a human societal level, but they maintain absolute doctrinal clarity. The attitude is essentially, we can work together in the marketplace, we can be good neighbors, we can trade, but we are absolutely not the same system, and we do not agree on the nature of reality.
I respect your humanity, but I absolutely do not validate your worldview. That is a very tough tightrope to walk in today's climate, where disagreeing with someone's worldview is often framed as an attack on their humanity.
It's incredibly difficult today.
But it perfectly explains the modern relevance of this tradition. The sources talk about how Dvaita directly combats specific psychological crises we are facing today.
It acts as an antidote to 3 modern crises. First, it directly counters relativism by insisting that objective truth exists and cannot be altered by your personal preference.
Okay, that's one.
Second, it counters identity confusion by providing fixed, meaningful roles within a larger cosmic structure. You don't have to wonder who you are a dependent soul meant to serve.
Well, yeah, and the third.
And third, it counters the modern meaning crisis, that feeling of endless, exhausting striving for material success without any lasting fulfillment, by offering an objective purpose. Your purpose isn't to accumulate wealth or followers. Your purpose is to align with the supreme reality.
But I have to point out the very real trade-off here. To get this multi-generational stability, to get this deep psychological relief from existential dread, you have to trade away rapid innovation.
You do.
You trade away interpretive freedom. You can't just casually mix and match spiritual practices like you're at a buffet, taking a little mindfulness here, a little manifestation there.
No buffet spirituality allowed.
It's like a house built on solid rock. It'll weather a hurricane, but you can't just easily knock down structural walls and redesign the floor plan on a whim because you feel like it.
That is the exact trade-off, and you cannot have it both ways. But what you have to realize is that for the people drawn to this tradition today, that trade-off isn't a negative, it is the entire selling point.
Oh, I see.
We live in a world of incredibly fluid identities, moral ambiguity, and constant systemic redesign, where the rules change every week. A growing number of people are starting for anti-chaos infrastructure.
They want the structure.
They want the house built on the rock. They want clear, unbreakable rules. They want to know that their actions have real consequences in a just universe. And they want a personal relationship with a God who is distinctly, eternally separate from them. They want to know they aren't just sitting alone in an empty, illusory universe talking to themselves.
Let's unpack everything we've covered and summarize the incredible journey we've just been on. We started by looking at the modern, almost desperate urge to be the center of our own universe, to define our own bespoke reality, and to view all constraints as inherently oppressive.
Yeah, the modern dilemma.
And we explored how Dvaita Vedanta, a 700-year-old tradition from the coast of southern India, offers a completely radical, beautifully complex alternative. It's an architecture of reality where differences aren't illusions to be overcome, but the very structural foundation of existence.
Perfectly stated.
It's a world where your actions genuinely matter because they are overseen by a perfectly just personal administrator. And it proposes that true peace doesn't come from dissolving into the universe or becoming your own God, but from humbly accepting your dependent specific role in an eternal hierarchy.
The shift in perspective is profound. It moves you from the exhausting task of being the architect of reality to the relieving joy of being a participant within it. It is a system that argues, with centuries of rigorous logic, that meaning is found in devotion and alignment, not in domination or self-elevation.
Wow.
We spend so much of our modern lives fighting to be completely independent. We fight to define our own truth, to break down all boundaries, and to rid ourselves of any constraints that tell us who we are or what we should do.
We really do.
But ask yourself, is the ultimate freedom really found in endless, exhausting self-definition? Or is true peace found in finally accepting your exact place in a system much larger than yourself?